How's everybody? Welcome to MarketWaves18. This conference has been in development for the past 6 months, but the story of MarketWaves and of FreightWaves started over a decade ago. I grew up in the trucking industry, was a part of a family that was involved in a large trucking company, but I left the industry in 2005 and went into payments, went into the FinTech industry. And it was at a time where financial technology companies, venture-backed companies, were working and really starting to focus on disintermediating the existing financial companies, the financial services companies. Companies were involved in developing payments technology, trying to change how we trade stocks, trying to change how we buy and sell insurance. And there was a lot of venture capital being developed and invested in that industry. And there was a community that was growing up in that industry to bring conferences very similar to this, where you have live immersive technology, communities of information and publications that were sort of providing the necessary information and resources that people could understand and interpret what's real and what's not. I left that business in 2014. We sold part of it off to US Bank. And after about 2 years of consulting, I decided to come back into the industry. And the reason I came back into freight is because I saw the same things happening in freight that had taken place in FinTech. The venture capital investments in freight tech really got started in 2014. And this is a slide. It doesn't look very good. Yeah, that looks better. This is a slide that really represents the investments. If you look at, this is comparing FinTech versus freight tech. If you look at where we're at in the stage, in 2014 was really the first time that freight tech ever broke $100 million in venture capital. This year, it will likely break $3 billion. Now, to put that in perspective, FinTech got its start really in the early 2000s, late 90s and early 2000s, the idea that these financial upstarts, these venture capital-backed companies could disintermediate the way we pay, the way we bank, the way we buy insurance, all of it. So a lot of excitement around that sector because the idea of sort of taking on these behemoths was really powerful. FinTech, or financial services as an industry, is about 7.5% of US GDP. Freight and logistics is 8.5% of GDP. So we have an industry that is bigger than the banking sector, bigger than the financial services sector, and yet we've gotten a late start in innovation. And so when we started this business, Lisa McGinty, our CMO, which you'll meet later today if you've not already met her, and I talked about how there is no community, there's no set of conferences, there's no events, there's no publications that really are deciphering what is real and what is not. And really the message is being set by the broader media that doesn't understand freight, or the freight media that doesn't understand technology. We said we have an opportunity to fix that, and that's what we've worked on doing. If you look at how fast, I like to compare these industries because I just think this is the opportunity that we've got. If you look at how fast freight tech is growing and how much investment is in this industry, it is growing exponentially faster than what FinTech is in terms of the stage. These are graphs showing indexes. We like to create indexes at FreightWaves if you hadn't noticed. But you can see how fast the investment cycle is and how much interest, going from $112 million back in 2014 to $3 billion. It's a really fast growth rate. And the reason I think that freight tech has an opportunity to be bigger in terms of venture capital than FinTech is because when we go through the next cycle of our evolution, whether it's autonomous or electric, there's going to be a lot of innovation taking place in an ecosystem around it. An interesting stat that I learned in payments is that you're more likely to get a divorce in the next 12 months than you are to change banks. Serious, it's true. You think about that. In freight, if we use sort of compare, it's almost like we're on Tinder. There's a lot of transactions that take place in freight. We're moving transactions all the time. It's an industry that is ripe for an opportunity for core disruption. And I want to talk a little bit about the innovations that are taking place inside this industry and sort of key us up for today. So I will start talking about really highly backed venture capital companies that has sort of entered the freight industry, bringing in freight executives and coming in to take the platform that they've done in other industries and really propel it. So Uber Freight sort of started out what we would view as the industry as a traditional freight broker with some digital technology. Now, they will argue that point. But what we've seen is they sort of built that base and are adding other innovations to their platform. They rolled out this shared trailer pool, which we'll hear about tomorrow. The idea that a third-party logistics company will have assets on demand sort of levels the playing field of services that they can offer vis-a-vis the asset-based carriers. It's going to be really interesting to see how that sort of shakes out. You have upstarts talking about creating a whole new OEM. I mean, we certainly could talk about Tesla. I'm going to talk a little bit about Nikola and the fuel cell vehicle because I think it's really, really powerful what they're doing. They're taking a technology that was built for the space shuttle, for the space station and space shuttle to power astronauts and sort of generate power in space, and applying it to the freight industry. Raised over 100 million. And then you have incumbents, large, multinational OEMs that don't want to be left out, that are creating electric vehicles and saying, we can solve this carbon problem, we can solve the emission problem, and we can create new technology using our engineering expertise, our capital, and our industry know-how to really do it. We're not going to be left out. You have new upstarts in IoT. You'll see Platform Science today. They built basically an operating system on the vehicle, an omnibus that allows all of the different IoT devices to sort of connect to a universal system that can then transmit that data off. And these are the types of investments that we're seeing. Of course, not to be left out, J.B. Hunt also. When I've been around trucking my whole life, and I would meet people throughout my life and talk about trucking, and inevitably, the name that always got brought up, so like J.B. Hunt, it was sort of universally recognized as the most traditional trucking company. But that sort of dismisses the fact that J.B. Hunt is far more than that. And they really developed the intermodal model that we now recognize how powerful that is. They were sort of the first major truckload carrier to adopt that, and that's really changed the nature of their business. And now they see this technology investment and venture capital going into the industry, and they say that they're going to be displaced by these technology upstarts, and they say, not so fast. We're going to put $400 million to work, and we are going to be the platform of the future. And everybody in this room is getting hit from both the upstarts, well-capitalized upstarts, as well as the large incumbents. And then you have innovations around pricing. Convoy has gone out and explored and said, we realize that one of the largest friction points between a shipper's relationship and a broker relationship is not knowing what the price actually is. So they're trying to eliminate the friction involved with tendering transactions so that the shipper can just tender over all their freight and not worry about the 3PL taking advantage of them at the time when trucks are tight. This is done in most commodity markets. For those that are truckload asset-based providers and buy fuel, you likely buy fuel based on an index and a discount thereof. And I think Convoy is certainly looking at the opportunity to do the same. And of course, with innovation, the core focus has been transparency. And the idea that pricing transparency should not be held by intermediaries or the asset providers or the shippers. It should be transparent. And so we've had innovations around price transparency in freight. And that's been one of the big issues that really has plagued our industry for decades, is the fact that pricing is somewhat opaque. DAT in the truckload industry, Freightos in the maritime industry, and you'll hear from a new upstart, TAC Index in the air freight industry, are trying to address that. They're trying to bring price and transparency. And out of that, you can bring financial settled contracts and futures to de-risk it. Now, we certainly are involved in that with our relationship with DAT. We're not involved with the other two, but we're really excited about this. When I first started this business, the idea was all futures. And people sort of thought we were nuts, and some of you may still think we're nuts, and that's fine. But what is interesting is the idea that you would trade capacity of moving products was sort of beyond the dry bulk industry, was sort of new, a new concept. And now we've seen upstarts. And now we have K&L that says they can take, there's a freight brokerage company out of Chicago, has some assets, that says we can take what we've built inside this brokerage industry and actually deploy it to create financial trading and risk management products for our customers. So there's an ecosystem that's going to pop up around these types of things. So today, you're going to see from 40 awesome vetted companies, they're going to demo their technology. Now, one of the things that I picked up in financial services and FinTech was the idea of a live demo, 7 minutes. And if you've been to Finovate or Money 2020, you know what I'm talking about. And if you've been to Transparency back in Atlanta, you'll know what I'm talking about. Is the idea that you get the companies on stage, no PowerPoint, no pre-canned deal, they have to show it, which eliminates vaporware. I've sold vaporware. I've sold a lot of vaporware in my life. I'm not selling it now to my investors. But it is very easy to look awesome in PowerPoint. It is not easy to do it live in front of people that know what you're talking about and see live demos. And you're going to see those today for 7 minutes. We're really excited about it. And I want to cover sort of the macro topics of what these companies are working on so that you can get a sense for what we're going to show today. So we have companies involved in freight. They're going to show not just the management of freight, but also the technology that they're developing around those infrastructure. You're going to see the TMS providers, sort of the operating system of the industry, talk about taking their mind share, market share, and technology infrastructure and deploying new experiences among their customer base. You're going to see the telematics companies, and telematics companies are incredibly important, sort of the next evolution of our space, because they are writing and providing the capacity discovery, the location discovery, and all the data that sort of flows off those creates a whole new set of opportunities for companies in the room and companies that are planning to innovate in the space. Of course, out of that, you get visibility and tracking platforms, companies that are taking the telematics data and providing the visibility of what is happening in transport. It's interesting because as an industry, we're really good at moving freight. We're not really good at moving data or providing visibility. And these companies and companies like them plan to change that. Slink, you'll hear from the CEO of Slink here shortly, who will talk about his experience at Transparency 18, where they won Best in Show, and you'll hear sort of his perspective, so I look forward to that. And then, of course, workflow, SaaS, and apps. Let's be honest, there's too many people, too many hands involved in every freight transaction. On a given clean truckload transaction, there are no less than 7 humans involved in the process, whether it's dispatching, load planning, driving, payment, all of that. 7 if the transaction is clean, and exponentially larger if there's a service failure. And that's the domestic truckload market. Go international into international forwarding, and you may have 40 to 60 companies involved in the process. We're talking about a really manual industry, and companies involved in the workflow, SaaS, and apps are trying to fix that. And of course, payments, the lifeblood of any industry, is how fast you get paid and how fast you turn over your receivables. Companies are saying there has to be a better way than paying carriers in 40 days. There has to be a better way of providing pricing transparency or payment transparency and eliminating all the sort of workflow and verification that takes place. IoT devices, going back to sort of telematics, it's sort of the emergence of devices and sensors on trailers and trucks that will sort of help flow the data and provide risk management and information so that these assets that are remote, we know what's happening with them. And of course, blockchain, a technology that is perhaps the most polarizing technology. There are some blockchain enthusiasts that believe blockchain will disintermediate everything. There's others that think it's just all bunk. These companies and companies like them think they can take and somewhere meet in the middle of hype and reality and deliver real solutions. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about what's happening with content and media. Paywalls are going to come down. Content has never been easier for people to get to. We at FreightWaves don't put our content, our editorial content, behind a paywall. We believe that information should flow and communities should be educated. And we think that relying upon paywalls is not a strategy. We certainly will never do paywall content, editorial content behind paywalls. And we think as an industry, you'll start to see that really be challenged because high quality content can be done more efficiently than ever. We also at FreightWaves are developing a dashboard of the market. We invite you to come out and look at it. It's just aggregating a bunch of these data points so that you can understand what's happening. One of the things when Lisa and I started on this journey, and one of the things that sort of evolved in our story, is the idea that there's a lot of noise. There are venture capitalists that don't know much about the space that are making big bets. There are incumbents that are stressed or upset because these upstarts are getting all the noise. Some of it's hype, some of it's reality. It's hard to know. And we decided, why don't we let a process of sort of vetting these opportunities? And we created the FreightTech 100 and the FreightTech 25. The FreightTech 100 was our editorial staff came in, and analysts came in and said, these are the companies that are doing really interesting things based on their nominations. Now, some companies didn't nominate themselves even, and they weren't included in the census. So if you didn't nominate and you weren't chosen, you need to nominate next year. But having said that, it was a chance to sort of look at all of the innovations that are happening. We narrowed it down to 100. And then we said, let's take this further. Let's bring in 60 thought leaders, analysts, economists, CEOs, venture capitalists, that sort of know the space, and let's let them decide who are the most innovative. And each person got a vote. And rather than doing pay to play, or rather than having FreightWaves tally the votes, we said, let's go further. And we brought in KSM, which is an accounting firm, to certify the results, sort of the Oscars. And we have not touched the results. They have the results, and I will present the envelope tomorrow with KSM. We're excited because the top 25 will be chosen among 60 thought leaders in the industry to sort of know what's happening. We think that's important to sort of vet what's real and what's not from outside the industry, but from the industry itself. And of course, Wednesday, we have the BITA, Blockchain and Transport Alliance meeting. If you're attending, we're excited. You'll see some really awesome progress in that group. You'll see movement towards standards, some real nice innovations. A lot of progress has been made in the last 6 months. We know that there needs to be some substantive outcomes. They believe that they can deliver that. The momentum is starting. It sort of took some time to get things going, and now it's going, and I'm really excited about what they're going to be talking about. And if you're sticking around on Wednesday and you're looking for something new and innovative, we have our trucking freight futures training with our partner DTN is going to talk about how freight futures can help de-risk the trucking business. Last night, so this is important, last night, so one of the things that we've really believed in is that this experience at MarketWaves and all of the events that we host should be top-notch, over the top. When I first did this conference back at Transparency, my board, my venture capitalists were like, whoa, you're spending way too much money. But the point is to make it an immersive experience. And most important, that you have the experience that you want and you expect of us. And if we are not doing things up to par and you feel like you're not getting the level of quality that you expect of a high-tech conference, then you should let us know. And last night, our staff realized that that demo room downstairs needed a little bit of work. It just wasn't cool and sexy, and we're all about sexy and cool. And so at 11 o'clock at night, we had 60 of our staff laying carpet. Literally, they went to Home Depot yesterday and laid carpet. So to sort of bring that experience, and that's what happened. So it's really important that you let us know if we can do things to make your experience more magical. And now I am pleased to present our market experts. As part of our FreightWaves business, we have accumulated a lot of thought leadership. And we created something called the market experts, which are really our analysts, subject matter experts that every single morning accumulate a one-page email talking about what's hot, what's important to focus on for the day. It's the daily playbook. And we thought it would be fun to do that on stage today. So I want to invite out George Abernathy, who's going to introduce our market experts. And I want to thank you for coming to MarketWaves18 and let us know if there's anything we can do to make your experience more magical. We have a really exciting lineup, and I'm very excited about what's happening.